Now, the reason why we even have the economic managers before the lawmakers is because of the hike in the cost of living. Basic staple food have become extremely expensive, especially for those at the lower cadre of the economy. We've seen protests. We've seen in Niger State, we've seen in Suleja, and we've seen in Kano State, the women, the bakers came out also to speak against this. And now labor unions have added their voices, and they are saying that they're giving the government 14 days, else they'll be down to. Of course, that has its own price and cost to the economy. Let's look at both sides now, see which one is more expensive with the economy. And to have this conversation is Mr. Ayode Jebo, is the Managing Director of Optimus by AfriInvest. Mr. Jebo, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
Yeah. So I guess where to start is to be or not to be. If the unions, if the workers down to, it costs the economy something. If they don't down to, we've already started seeing protests by, the unorganized labor, women and youth taking up to the street. That obviously will also cost the economy something. How do we weigh these two costs?
Okay, thank you, and really valid point. But I think for the union, I feel that when we look at in terms of the effectiveness and the impact, some of the down tools or strike has caused, I think it leads to more negative impact on the economy than using other tools or other measures of engagement, I think, with the government. So I would see that most times what we actually see is let there be more, maybe I would say, constructive based on policies. So if this strike or is coming up, what are the policies that will be holding government to that have been well crafted, that we can partner with the government to see that we begin to see the impact of those policies, and rather than just go on strike based on yes, it's really a challenging and tough time for Nigeria, but if we're also not careful, this can also aggravate or even worsen that situation, because when you look at the income earning capacity of Nigerians, most times you have people earn money daily. So if you short that opportunity, things may get worse if it's prolonged for long. So I would say that, yes, there's no silver bullet to solving this problem, but there may be more to adopt more constructive ways that, which is policy driven. We are all talking about oil theft. Can we have reasons why engagement that around the oil theft that will all impact, that is impacting on FX and impacting on revenue of Nigerians? That's if the people are hearing that the objective of a strike is because of this, that even you would win also the heart of more Nigerians to join in this fight. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I guess the frustration of the unions is that there have been talks, and they had agreements. I know we stayed on that matter for weeks. Then, they had a committee. I think they had even up to 2 committees that were supposed to deliberate on that with government and the unions. And now time for implementation. So I don't think that the federal government has told the unions we have not implemented because we cannot afford it. Perhaps that's where, you're talking about the issue of boosting our oil production and making more revenue available. I guess that's where the frustration of the workers comes from.
Okay, I get that, and it's really, to be candid, is really a very germane cause. But it's also trying to look at the overall impact. When you look at policies, there are always those that will be positive, those that will be negative. But when you want to take decisions, you need to be sure that it's going to have overall net positive impact. So the cause of the NLC is germane, fighting for the workers. And it's also on the part of the government, there's also a need to honor agreements, which is really very valid. So I'm just looking at it from the overall economic impact, such that even for those that the NLC is trying to protect, don't suffer more than the position where they are. There other ways, continued engagement that can be done before finally embarking on strike? And just to be fair to them, I know a lot of engagement has been done, a lot of committees have been formed, but it's really a tough call. But the overall impact, it's important to look at the overall impact Nigeria. So you see that the workers, when you look at workers, what the proportion of the total population, even governments, when you look at government's contribution as a proportion of the total economy is still also less than 10% to GDP. So what happens to the overall other 90% if there's no movement on a daily basis? If we are able to quantify how much do we lose, even if you do on the back of the envelope analysis of looking at the GDP, private sector GDP, and you divide it by a certain number of days, look at some of those sectors that are being shut down, you will see that we are actually losing a lot. And if it's prolonged, it may be a major drag that the cost that the union is trying to push may eventually now come back to put us in a more drastic position or favorable position.
So maybe, Mr. Ebo, what we could look at is communication. I mean, before now, I've had this conversation with a couple of people, and they say perhaps the government is not communicating enough. But we saw the president has now ordered grains to be released from the reserve. We've seen Niger State governor also take some strong stands, which, in some ways have also got some other controversy. But I guess when we talk about communication, it's not just about what the government or representative of the administration say, but what they do. For instance, how much squeeze are they feeling if we're all in this together? That could give the people confidence that we will come out of this soon because we are all in it together. But if the elites are still not feeling the impact, that it means we're going to be in this for a longer time.
Yes, Ini, I think it's well said. We look at there's a need for more communication. There's a need for engagement, because if there's less communication, it gives room for a lot of speculation, it gives room for a lot of assumptions. So that needs to, there's a need to improve in that light, because currently if we look at based on the fact, and that's why even as analysts, you look at the figures to discuss, and based on your engagement with stakeholders in the economy, so you will know that things are not going the way it should. So there needs to be an period when, in this kind of situation, you have more engagement. We've seen it in developed climes, trying to provide a bit of assurance for the citizens that it's only a matter of time. So there can be more periodic and more frequent communication on the current situation we have, especially if there's been an agreement. There needs to be more communication as to why it has not been implemented. So you would see it would be scientific, it will be justified. You see the reason why it's not possible now, why maybe you have to wait for additional 2 months. So that, I think, it's really very important, so that we all want the progress of this economy. Like you said, we're all suffering the brunt. Nobody can exclude itself from the exchange rate, both from the top people in the country as to everybody is suffering the brunt of this. So there's a need to communicate, and for us to see that clear roadmap that we would take, that will very soon, there will be light at the end of the tunnel. But that communication, I think, is really a valid point that maybe needs to be more emphasized.
So perhaps now that the labor unions have given an ultimatum you would see a reconvening of the meeting, you know, the committee and the union. Perhaps that's where the conversation will start from. Because, I mean, I don't know if the economy can afford a strike at this time. We're just at the brink, you know.
Yes, you are correct. It's really very fragile. Prices of things are already high. So imagine there's a major shutdown and there's no, in terms of transportation, it means that even the available quantity or the goods available, the prices would skyrocket. And as a result, if there's no movement, supply of fuel around, you see that prices would increase. So, and that is what I'm saying, that at the end of the day, the overall impact may now be negative, that people may be worse off than where they were even before the strike if it's prolonged.
All right, thank you so much, Managing Director of Optimus by AfriInvest, Mr. Ayode Jebel, for your sharing your perspective with us.
Always my pleasure. Thanks for having me.